Today we're going to be reviewing lesson 4.4. Now, these are the types of problems that you are going to be seeing on your quiz later on this week. So we want to make sure that we know how to do these three problems. So I would suggest that you pause the video, try these three problems, and then when you unpause, you'll be able to see my solutions, and I'm going to be talking through how to do them. So please pause the video now. All right, so hopefully you tried each of these problems. Here are the answers. So in problem number 1, when you're asked to solve the equation and to check for extraneous solutions, notice that I have two log base 2 terms on the left side. And so because they share the same base, we get to follow the rule of we can condense this down to a single log, which still has a base of 2. Remember, because there's an addition sign in between them, we are going to be able to multiply those two terms. So this x plus 14 is going to get multiplied by x. So essentially, I distribute the x, and that's why now we've got log base 2, and then we have x squared plus 14 as the argument that's attached to the log. This still equals 5. It still has a log base 2. Once we have that single log isolated by itself, where there are no numbers that are outside of the log, okay, everything is in parentheses with the argument, that tells us that we can go ahead and we can rewrite this logarithmic equation into its equivalent exponential form. So remember, 2 is the base. Whatever that log is set equal to is the exponent. And then we set that equal to the argument of the log. So I wrote it as x squared plus 14x equals 2 to the 5th power. Now, 2 to the 5th power is 32. I want to move everything to one side, so notice that I subtracted 32, and that's why my new equation says x squared plus 14x minus 32 equals 0. So this is now a factorable problem. Remember, when I have a quadratic, there's 4 different ways that you can solve a quadratic. Factoring is, in this case, the fastest route. So I was just asking myself what multiplies to negative 32 but adds to positive 14. So that's positive 16 and negative 2. But then I had to set each of those factors equal to 0. So that meant I was subtracting 16 from both sides and I was adding 2. And that's why my answers for x were negative 16 and positive 2. Now notice that the moment I see that I have my two answers here, the directions say to solve and then check the extraneous solutions. So that means I want to go back to my original problem. And remember, domain tells us that whatever is attached to that log, it always has to end up being greater than 0. So the moment I plugged negative 16 into the first argument, negative 16 plus 14 would give me negative 2. That is not greater than 0. So even if it worked in the second x, which it wouldn't because it would just be negative 16, which once again is not greater than 0, that tells me that, okay, negative 16 doesn't work. It doesn't fit in the domain. But if I plug in positive 2, well, 2 plus 14 is definitely going to be something that's greater than 0. Obviously, plugging in 2 to the x in the second half of that first top equation here is going to give me something greater than 0. So I even mathematically showed you here, but as long as, once again, you understand that the arguments that are attached to the log have to end up being greater than 0 to fit the domain, only 2 worked in this particular problem. Okay, in the second problem, it wants us to evaluate log base 2 of log base 3 of 81. Okay, so this is where you have to think about order of operations. Notice that what I have in parentheses is log base 3 of 81. That's what you have to focus on first. Remember, if you need to, you can set this equal to x, and then you can rewrite it into exponential form. The other way you can think about this is, okay, 3 is the base. What do I have to raise 3 to in order to get 81? Well, 3 to the 4th power is going to get me 81. So log base 3 of 81 is 4. So that's why I got to replace that whole entire parenthesis with just the number 4. So now I have log base 2 of 4. And same thing, I could set that equal to x. I could loop it around and do my exponential equivalent equation to solve. Or you can just think, okay, 2 is the base of the log. 2 to what power is going to get me 4? Well, 2 squared is. So that's why 2 is our final simplified answer. Okay, you should be able to do that without a calculator. With the first problem, I would let you use a calculator. Okay, finally, in this last one, they're asking for us to condense, which means I want to write it as a single log. In this case, these are natural logs. But remember, first thing I'm going to do is anytime I have a number that is out in front, to condense, I got to move that number back to being an exponent. So the 1/2 got moved back to being x to the 1/2 power. The 3 got moved back. Now it's y to the 3rd power. Notice how I have 2 negative signs. So what I did next then is I took out the negative. I factored it out, which then left me with 2 terms that were being added together. So the natural log of y to the 3rd power is now being added to the natural log of z minus 2. So then now, once again, I have 2 things that are being subtracted. Subtraction means division. So whatever is first, which is that x to the 1/2 power, that is going to go in the numerator. Whatever is then being subtracted is going to go in the denominator. Notice that what I have in parentheses is being added. Addition means multiplication. So notice that in my denominator, those arguments were being multiplied. Now notice that I only have one natural log written in this whole entire problem. When you condense it down, you only have one log. Okay, notice that I have 2 options for how you can write this. Because we have a fraction for the numerator exponent, you could technically rewrite it as a radical, but I would accept either answer. All right, so hopefully that review makes sense because once again, you will be dealing with a quiz this week and you're going to see those types of things on the quiz. But what you should be working on then for the first half of this week, it's actually this assignment is going to be due on Friday at midnight. So you do have the week to finish this out. But on page 461, you're going to do 11 through 29 odd, 55 through 83 odd. But then notice that I want you to skip 57 and 71. Okay, remember, if you ever have any questions as you're working on this throughout the week, please send me a Schoology message and we can go through it. Okay, so reach out if you have any questions.